Kazakhstan Respublikasының Pремьер-министрі
Prime Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Alihan Ismailov.
Жердің табиғи ресурстары. Адамзат оларды өндіріп,
Resources of the earth and our soil, of course, people were processing and producing different types of products like extractives, and they are connected with one another, and that is why we need to enhance our partnership in order to develop these directions.
еліміз вольфрам, уран және хром кендерін.
Our country is on the first place on a wolfram, as well as the second place on the uranium. We are on the third place in CIS countries among the extractives and fossils. The metallurgical sphere has more than 1,000 companies. There is the ferocious metals, as well as the and of course to our social economical development, lots of companies are contributing. Monocities are living and they have enterprises. That is why we need to say that our values, of course, it's our extractors. That is why Kazakhstani content has to enhance, and it should close down the cycle. That is why we need to have regulating and stimulating impulses. That is why the processing producers should receive all of the raw materials with adequate prices, so that we will have the full-fledged system. Mainly, we are importing the equipment and other technologies and spare parts. And here in Kazakhstan, we in the metallurgy, we are quite developed, and it is the main driver of the economy, and that is why it should develop further. Dear participants of the forum, allow me to invite moderator of the plenary session, Yerlan Dosumbekov Giberkinovich, the manager partner of the company Ernst & Young in Central Asia and Caucasus, chairman of the board of the Association of Kazakhstan Council of Foreign Investors. Good morning, dear participants. I am glad to see you on this forum where we have foreign investors, the representatives of the business of Kazakhstan, and associations. We know that the metallurgy, mining and smelting enterprises, and as well as the metallurgy itself is one of the drivers of economy, and export is 19%. As the biggest sectors of Kazakhstan, we know that there should be poured significant amount of the investments. And in the extractors, we know that the huge sums are invested, and our company is dealing with not only finding the deposits or discovering the deposits, we are also dealing with the finding the ways to work with local companies as well as the foreign and international companies. And mining and smelting is, of course, one of the sectors that where should be created. So that is why I would like to give a floor to first speaker, Prime Minister of Republic of Kazakhstan, Alikhan Ismailovich. Good morning, dear participants. I welcome you to the International Forum Kazakhstan-Produced Content 2.0. The events of recent years have had tremendous impact on global and regional economies. Despite these challenges, the economy of Kazakhstan adapted to external conditions and entered a trajectory of sustainable growth. Economic growth for 10 months of 2023 amounted to 4.9%. Positive dynamics are observed in main industries. Investments in fixed assets increased by 12.6%, and amounted to 13.3 trillion tenge. Thanks to the actions of the government and the National Bank, inflation showed 10.8%, and that is 2 times. We are faced with the task of further reducing the level of inflation. As part of the set of measures to control and reduce inflation, one of the main directions is to increase the volume of domestic production. This requires our joint efforts. Development and support of entrepreneurship is an important part of the government's work. Therefore, problematic business issues are regularly discussed in the government together with the American National Chamber. Overall, the share of small and medium-sized businesses increased to 36.4% of GDP. The number of people employed in the sector increased by 14% to which is 4.3 million tenge. Systematic measures are being taken to create favorable conditions for doing business, for dealing with business or running business. Thus, to reduce unnecessary requirement for business, a new regulatory policy is being implemented. 9,000 irrelevant claims have already been excluded, another 1,000 will be excluded by the end of the year. Thanks to the automated risk management system from January 1st, inspections will no longer be scheduled without a human factor. This, among other things, will reduce the number of inspections by half. To further improve tax administration, work is underway to digitalize it. To stimulate SMEs, a retail tax regime at a rate of 4% has been introduced this year. With the introduction of a single payment from the payroll of micro and small businesses, the overall financial burden has been reduced to 20%. In order to stimulate investment by large businesses, new projects are exempted from MAT for 5 years. A new tax code, which is under public discussion, will come into effect in 2025. It will exempt new manufacturing sector projects from taxes by 3 years. At the same time, the issue of business financing is important. Development institutions have a special role in this regard. Byterek Holding has provided financial support worth 2.2 trillion since the beginning of the year, including the Development Bank of Kazakhstan that allocated 314 billion tenge. And of course, we are going to continue this work, and from the fund of the development of the industry, it had been financed the projects on the amount of 195 billion tenge. There are also projects, undergoing projects amount to 300 billion tenge. Dear friends, the head of the state has set a clear task to increase the state budget to 60% within 3 years. We have the potential and resources for this. First of all, it requires reducing import dependence. The share of import is still 46%. In the oil and gas sector, for example, the biggest share of purchases fall on the three largest consortia, which is 75% of purchases of the entire energy sector. Since the beginning of the year, their volume totaled 3.5 trillion tenge, of which 1.9 trillion tenge is the share of local content. At the same time, only 9% of them are commodities. If we talk about other sectors, in the mining sector, the share of purchased goods is only 15%, in mechanical engineering 13.5%, in pharmaceuticals 20%. Therefore, we believe that together with the National Chamber Atamiken, we should organize systematic work to establish business contacts between manufacturers and large entrepreneurs. This would help to develop the SMEs belt of large system-forming enterprises. The government has held meetings with medium-sized businesses in all regions to which industrial sectors are represented, with real prospects for the organization of local production. The investment legislation provides support measures for the creation of such production facilities. Therefore, we urge business representatives to take active steps to localize production facilities. At the same time, large enterprises should adopt their own local content development programs. The main tool in these programs should be the conclusion of long-term off-take contracts. I would also like to draw attention to strengthening human resources. We should nurture our own personnel to replace foreign specialists. In this respect, our large enterprises should take patronage over educational institutions with subsequent employment of graduates at their enterprises. Dear ladies and gentlemen, the issue of Kazakhstan content development are among the most topical. Financial resources and state support measures are allocated for these purposes. Business should use all available opportunities. In turn, the government is ready to take into account all your proposals and ideas. I wish the forum participants fruitful work, constructive dialogue, and interaction. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Alekhan Astkhanovich. And now allow me to invite speakers to the stage. Andres Blanco, CEO of Excalibur Metallurgic Group, Multiphysics Group. Takhmina Nagumanova, Chairman of the Manufacturing Industry Committee, Vice President of the Union of Chemists of Kazakhstan. Nurahmet Nuriyev, Chairman of the Board of Kazakhmus. Raimbek Batalov, Chairman of the Presidium Atamiken. Dear speakers, I would like to extend my gratitude. Before we will start our discussion, I would like to remind you that you have to keep in mind the time frames. For the speeches, you should deliver them.
I would like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Andres Blanco, who is the General Director of Excalibur Multiphysics. Andres, we're very happy to have you here. Please welcome. Please proceed to the nostril. Thank you.
Your Excellency, Prime Minister, Excellence, Minister of Industry and Construction, distinguished diplomats, members of the government, distinguished business representative, and distinguished guests. It's for me, sorry about I don't speak Kazakh, I will speak in English. Hopefully it will be well understood. I would like to thank the organizers for inviting Scalable Multiphysics to this session to briefly explain how we can cooperate on development of the local content in Kazakhstan. Okay. Scalable Multiphysics is a worldwide leader in the natural resources or natural capital mapping. Basically, to make a comparison, we are like nuclear medicine technologies. So we produce map of the anomalies of the natural resources in a very fast, efficient, and non-invasive way, and just to identify where the potential of the natural resources are. Relevant in this slide is just to say that we have a local office here in Kazakhstan, which is a very important place, as I will explain later on. So talking about local content, what is our model? Our model is basically developing their resources jointly with the countries where we consider that our partnership and contribution can be relevant. And this is the case of Kazakhstan. So we decided that Kazakhstan is a key country due to the geopolitical situation, but also due to the potential of the natural resources. And we established a subsidiary here to cover Central Asia. How we do the local content development? Well, first we do technology transfer. And good news is there's no limitation on technology transfer here in Kazakhstan, which we have in some cases like China and Russia, because some of our technologies are subject to ITAR export control restrictions. There's no limitation here. We can train the people here, we can train our team, we can share the technology, we can do joint development of technologies here, which is what we're going to do. Applying the most advanced technologies currently in the world in mapping the natural resources and the natural capital. We are working currently in 12 countries in mapping. We're working for mining companies, energy companies, but at the government level country, we're mapping 12 countries, from very developed countries, Australia, for instance, or US, Canada, until development countries like DRC, Congo DRC, where we are mapping actually. Then the second axis of our local content incorporation is basically developing the transfer of the training. We do training for the local people, and we train the local people, sending them to the different offices. For instance, we recently started in India last year. The operations, we have already part of the Indian team members in training in our offices in Australia, in Europe, in Canada, and US. This is a summary of basically what we do in the airborne geophysics. It's a combination of different technologies, from very sophisticated to less sophisticated, that you can apply in more or less resolution. The acquisition can be applied to different natural resources. That's mining, hydrocarbons, underground water, hydrogen, which is now very critical, of course, critical raw materials, geothermal. So with the same data being acquired, the interpretation is different, and that produces a relevant asset for the countries. And this is a very relevant page, which is the last one, by the way. We are not talking about data. This is data, but it shouldn't be considered data. It's a relevant asset for the country. Information of the potential of the natural resources is a key asset for the country. To develop the natural resources industry here, what is required, obviously, is a legal framework, which I think, but what I know that Kazakhstan government is working on that and is taking big steps on that side. The other component is the information. Information is important for planning. Information is important for understanding how you should drive your efforts. And more importantly, is an asset. It's an asset that can be used, of course, in better negotiation and distribution of the resources and deploy in a just and responsible manner. But it's also an asset that, with the proper evaluation, and now we are working on application of artificial technologies, artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies, basically to get the output of what is the economic impact in the national economy of developing these natural resources in the way that is being developed in other countries. That is itself a strong asset to reinforce the capacity of the governments to get funding, additional funding, not just based on the standard sovereign warranty, but if this asset is understood and validated internationally, it's an asset to capitalize, it's an asset to reinforce the funding capacity. And obviously, there's a direct creation of employment and direct creation of GDP growth. Two examples, and I finish here. In Australia, 8 years ago, they started intentionally the program Exploring the Future. They invested in the range of 300 million in getting data on the country. This independent reports done by analysts over there said that per every dollar invested by the government, the return on investment, direct and indirect, goes from $15 to $164, depending on the area, depending on the concession. And more important, the total value of the economy generated around this information that is being acquired by the government is estimated in 76, I might be wrong, 76 billion US dollars, and the employment generated already is 80,000 direct employment. That's one example in the development country. But on the other side, in the underdeveloped countries, for instance, Angola. Angola was a country of oil and gas and diamonds for 40 years. For the first time that some data were acquired and they were presented in the International Mining Conference, top 4 of the major mining companies came into the country to negotiate agreements over there, relevant agreements, for the first time in 40 years. That's a major improvement for our developing country to position itself on the new critical raw materials and energy transition. And that's why Kazakhstan has all the potential, because you're top 1 producing uranium, you are among the top producers in oil and gas, in gas, in sun, in copper, but the potential is huge compared to the reality. And the best way to do that is getting the data, and getting the data controlled by the government and get responsible partners invested in the country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blanco. Let me ask you a question on the basis of your very interesting and useful presentation. So obviously, engaging with the local communities is an important part of your commitment on local contents. So can you share with us with your views or your plans about how Excalibur is planning on engaging with local communities? Are there any initiatives or partnerships in terms of developing local talent or working with local entrepreneurs, which will eventually become a part of your local contents commitment? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very interesting question, which basically fits in our philosophy, our business model. Obviously, the approach is different on development countries or underdeveloped countries and developed economies. But we always work with local partners. Actually, here we have a local company and we have local partners in our company. We have local people and we train the local people. And on the training side, on the technology side, we transfer technology to the local company. So it's not that we bring systems from outside. We get the systems here, we get the equipment, we participate on the development of a new solution, and actually we are considering building what we call lab, a scalable lab, here in Kazakhstan to participate on these machine learning and artificial intelligence developments to apply on the data of the natural capital. In developing countries or underdeveloped, we also do social programs. So we have a foundation. I think we are proudly the only company in our sector that we have a foundation, and we do social programs mostly for kids and women, combining education and development for them.
Thank you very much, and I wish you every success in your future operations here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Теперь позвольте пригласить нашего...
Now let me invite our next speaker, Tahminen Nutagaliyeva. So please, the floor is yours. Dear Mr. Alekhan Ashanovich, dear participants of the forum, at this forum I will speak on behalf of the processing industry. This is a big honor and pleasure for me. The President in his message said that we need to provide for all the conditions for our economy, and that's why we need to create all the conditions for the fast development of processing industry. We need to support our local goods producer so that they would be able to provide their goods in the public procurement system. And the third of our GDP is for the procurement of subsoil users. Today we have the negative position with regard to the procurement of our local producers. We had the previous 24.2%. In 2022, we see the decrease by 16%. However, I want to know that there are different rates of growth of mining and processing industry. According to the results, it was a consulting group DASCO, the mining industry increased almost 3 times over 30 years. However, the processing industry just recently was able to restore the level that was just after the independence. Let me give some other statistical data. The total volume of gross production was almost 34 trillion tenge. Almost half of it is the products of mining sector, including the extraction of oil and gas, 35%, and metal ore. 6 trillion tenge is the share of metallurgy. It's 18% if we speak about total volume. This is also the extracted products, but this is the processed one, and then it's sent to export. We also see the share of the production of foods and products, 9%. 4% is the machinery industry, car production. I mean cars, parts, accessories production. At the same time, chemical production takes only 3%. Other non-metallic and mineral production is at the level of 2.5%. These are our producers of construction material. Coke and oil products production is even less percent, and the share of light and paper industry is 1% in aggregate. And we see that mining metallurgical complex was 26% upon the results of 9 months. These are the high volumes, and this is a contribution of this sector in our economy. And we have to take into account the multiplication effect that this industry might give to other sectors. So for us, it is very important now to create the specific mechanism of mutual cooperation, interaction between our industries. We are going to discuss lots of issues during this forum. According to WTO, Kazakhstan doesn't provide the direct support of local goods producers. So we reduced the 20% of discount, and as you might know, we have only the share of internal country requirement. However, the methodology for calculation of intra-country value allows us to provide for this 50%, and I think that you know it. At the same time, I want to focus on the negative trend in all public and regulated procurement with regard to subsoil users, some RUK, Kazana procurement. I want to say that right now there are no direct procurement of local goods by increasing the volumes of goods and services. And we see mainly the procurement of foreign goods. We have the law or the resolution of the Minister of Investment and Development. It is on the rules of approval for subsoil users and the subcontractors. So these rules shall be used in the procurement. So although the rules have contained the subjects and the actors, we do not see any imperative norms to the contractors when we speak about tenders, when we speak about requirements to have this Kazakhstani content. The situation with Kazakhstani content makes the situation difficult, and sometimes we see that non-standardized goods and services are procured through different exchanges. Today, the quasi-state enterprises, they have the clear list of exchange goods that were approved by the order of the Ministry of Economy. According to the statistical data in 2022, we had 15 commodity exchanges that provided for the procurement of subsoil users with such non-standardized goods. And you know, the statistical data is not the good ones. Let's take the machinery products. In 2019, through these exchange stocks, we saw only 190 billion tenge goods. We had the procurement. And then in 2022, 520 billion tenge. Chemical industry. In 2019, we had the products procured for 109 billion tenge. In 2022, 225 billion tenge. In general, we consider the platform for procurement at this commodity exchange is the opportunity, legal opportunity and arrangement between subsoil users of mining, metallurgy, and the suppliers of foreign equipment. One of the most important proposals, and today the Prime Minister was speaking about it, it is very important so that the system forming enterprises working in subsoil use production would also be interested in the development of local Kazakhstani content. There should be some specific programs. And I'm speaking about large companies such as ERG, MT, Kazakhmas. I also would like to pay your attention at the following thing. The current legislative norms that are aimed at the development of voluntary support of local producers from subsoil use are not working in practice. As we know, since January 1st, 2022, the Code on Subsoil Use and Subsoil Users, we have Article 28.9 about the voluntary agreements on incentivizing entrepreneurship, where we see the provisions that subsoil user jointly with authorized body, jointly with Atomic National Chamber, will conclude such agreements for the development, provide for the development of different programs, and Atomic should have monitored such processes and should have access to such procurement. Taking into account the aforementioned information, the representative of processing industry considers that procurement system in the current situation, taking into account political situation, shall be under the control of authorized state bodies. And it is good that this platform, this forum, Kazakhstan-Produced Content 2.0, is dedicated to this topic. We support the commitment and the aspiration of enterprises to increase this intra-country value. We need to organize joint work so that to reach the following goals. We need to see import substitution in metallurgic industry. We need to increase the share of Kazakhstani content in the procurement, and we need to achieve the target indicator 60% that was mentioned by the President in his message. We need to start and launch off-take contracts that would allow to increase investment attractiveness, and we will have stable sale. And it is very important, and I want to address to the government, we have suggested, we have proposed to you before, we need to provide for the opportunity of using off-take contract as a secure for loans for investments. However, for the functioning of this system, there should be some other measures. First of all, we need to provide for transparency at all procurement stages. And here I want to speak about planning specifically. As a domestic producer, we do not have access to those goods that should have been bought. And I guess that today we are going to discuss it. We are planning to have a unified digital platform for that. However, if our domestic business would have this information, we would have unified specification, unified requirements. We would be able to transform our production. We would be able to have investment so that to provide all necessary goods and services for metallurgical enterprises. I think it's just the issue of our wish and the issue of time. We need to change the method of calculation of the share and the price for which the goods would be sold. And we need to change this calculation methodology of Kazakhstan-produced content. We need to have the rules for monitoring of the procurement stages. So we have this provision, and it is under discussion now. This shall be the main principle of our public procurement, and as business, as Atomican, as a committee, all our members, all representatives of different sectors, we are all ready to develop, to talk, to work out, and to have specific achievement of our targeted indicator. Dear Mr. Alekhan Ashanovich, dear forum participants, today we have here representatives from metallurgic industry, from processing industry, and any business works to make profit and to have it through the most rational way. But sometimes they think only about one-time profit. I would agree that we have lots of issues, but now it's time to understand that the development of intra-country value is a provision of economic security of the country. And the name of our forum, Kazakhstan-Produced Content 2.0. I really hope that such forums and the work that is going to start after our session will not bring to the score 2-0 in favor of the metallurgy industry, but it will also give some impetus to development of Kazakhstan-produced content. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Takhminov, for your information, for your presentation. Let me ask you a question. In your speech, you've mentioned that there are different growth rates for the mining sector and for processing sector. So could you comment, please, as the chairman of the committee of this processing industry of Atomican? A mining sector has these results, and I guess everybody understands why, because we have the extraction of raw materials, we see export, we also see the growing prices at the global market, and it's good that we have it. However, with the processing industry, the situation is a bit different. So that to produce any goods in this processing industry, we need to have huge investments. We need to train specialists, prepare personnel. This is a process that is risky, that is time-taking, and it requires the initial support from the government, from the state, and initial support from the regulated procurement. We need to have some kind of impetus, and then we will provide for the needs of the internal market, and then we will come to the export. There were lots of support measures presented. For example, for chemical industry, I also want to say that due to several of our development programs, we were able to update and modernize such large enterprises as Kazphosphate, Kazazot, and now they have stable productions of their products, and it means security for the country in provision with the mineral fertilizers. However, to build something new in chemical industry, we need to have high capital investments, and actually the industry itself is requires lots of capital. And of course, without guaranteed raw material, without support from the state bodies, let's take Uzbekistan, they have the guarantees from the countryside, from the state, but we do not have it. So for these 30 years, we do not have the plant that would produce fertilizers. However, we have now some projects and plans. However, there should be lots of investments. It will not be fast, but I want also to say that processing industry, if we look at the dynamics, from 1991 till this year, let's look at the time. We have suffered lots of crises, currency crises, and these issues, they impacted local goods producer. And so by small steps, we still see the growth in our processing industry. Thank you so much, Ms. Takhmin. And now let me give the floor to our next speaker, the chairman of the management board of Kazakh Corporation, to Mr. Nuriev, please. Dear Mr. Alekhan Ashanovich, dear forum participants, dear colleagues, I'm glad to greet all of you here. The head of state, in his message to the people of Kazakhstan, identified the need to support local production and local producers. It's an important task, and we agree and support it. Due to the support of large mining enterprises, we see lots of small and medium and large activities, production plants. We have different forums, exhibitions, and other events. Today, so that to implement the task that was set by the President for achieving the target indicator, altogether we need to solve many issues and to do it. And this platform is a good opportunity for all of us. Speaking about support of domestic producer, we need to look at the issues of regulation. From the government point of view, we see some issues. There was no specific regulation. Only in 2007, there were unified rules for subsoil users with regard to goods, works and services. There were main principles of state regulation of public procurement by private subsoil users. And we need to note that despite the reforms from 2010 till 2018, including with the procurement methods, these rules still preserved the main and basic principles. At the initial stage, it gave the impetus to the development of the market, and it allowed domestic producers to speak about themselves.
With the new reality, new experience, we have developed new approaches, and some procurement aspects have become hindering factors for the development of domestic production. In terms of business operations, the existing mechanism of amendments to contracts on procurement of services and goods is not effective because amendments are supposed to be based on mutual agreement of parties, but due to different framework formalities and constraints, this main rule doesn't work. And it's important to provide for a more flexible system which would allow reviewing prices and other important terms of contracts in relation to external factors that affect transactions. For example, using formal price formation could mitigate such external risks. If we look at certification of domestic goods, we have in parallel two types of certificates which affects this sector. Industrial certificate prevents them from showing the local content, and that's why they have to procure STKZ certificates for the reporting purposes. General approach for certification of domestic goods could be revised. Another example, the condition of investing at least 5% of the contracts related procurement into Kazakhstan economy I think that it's a difficult condition to fulfill because it makes procurement more expensive for customers and could eventually lead to non-effective spending of funds. And if we talk about long-term contracts, producers need time to set up their production and upgrade it. And upgrade and construction could take from a few months to a number of years. During that time, externalities could change, prices for raw materials could change, there could be inflation, etc. And entrepreneurs are faced with many unknown variables. We need to review the law of Kazakhstan on industrial policy so that we would allow for a more flexible approach to approval by parties of terms. And we need to provide for stimulating incentives. Offtake contracts and long-term contracts rules should be very clear and allow more freedom for entrepreneurs to enter new markets, new types of goods, and modernize their production. We should not implement those unique mechanisms through setting binding rules and formal regulation. Such agreements should allow subsoil users and producers to consider a long-term cooperation. Let's discuss the electronic procurement system. It's important to note the low quality of NADLOG register. Some interruptions in its operation have negative impacts on the users. NADLOG system has limited resource. There's no option for pre-qualification, selection. There is no system for supplier assessment. And in 2022, a new system of Tazalem was introduced, but still there were no positive results. It's not operational. In that respect, we need to expedite the development and implementation of new electronic system, which would allow to quickly interact with customers and suppliers and see the whole situation on the market. We could use the experience of the largest successful marketplaces using their operation principles and individual mechanisms. For the mining sector, it's still an important factor. The quality of the products they procure, we're ready to work with the sector, but it should be mutual. So we need to provide for counter obligations related to the quality of products. Domestic producers should try to improve their production processes and technologies using international standards. They should develop quality management systems. It's obvious that quality will require certain investments, and it will be wise to make such investments only after the respective positive legal changes I mentioned before. That's why today's forum is very useful to build this constructive dialogue with the authorized government agencies and domestic producers. So in order to support Kazakhstani-produced content, we need to consolidate and refocus subsoil users' efforts in this direction. We suggest that we focus on the agenda of today's forum and keep carrying out such forum annually. We could have similar events at regional level, quarterly, and we could segment large mining enterprises based on their region of presence in Ulitau, Zhambyl, and Karaganda regions on the basis of Kazakhmys. In Pavlodar, Aktyubiya regions, it could be done on the basis of ERG. In East Kazakhstan, on the basis of Kastink, etc., with the rotation of regions. Such events at regional level would allow an effective and transparent dialogue platform. Large mining enterprises will be able to be familiarized with existing domestic producers, which will stimulate the development of domestic export-oriented producers. With the support of government agencies and domestic producers, we are ready to work in this direction. The share of domestic added value has been measured since 2019. At Kazakhmys, it was 36%. And it used to reach 77% at certain times, which is the evidence of ongoing effort in this direction. However, it's important to understand that the major share of local content accounts for services. So it's very important to distinguish those types of services and goods and increase the share of local content on the side of goods. And we're taking specific steps in that direction. We have a joint project with two Kazakhstani companies, VTMKZ and the PS Global, to build a factory in Karaganda region, which will be launched in 2024. This project will allow for increasing local content in Kazakhstan's procurement by 12% annually, but we don't want to stop there. We are now at the stage of building another project which will help increase local content by additional 1.5%. But when we analyze demand and supply for those two projects, we had to do it manually, collect data manually. So I understand the difficulties that entrepreneurs have in implementing such projects. That's why we support the initiative at Amiken to create a digital procurement platform. We are sure it will improve the administration of government support programs, will increase transparency and clarity to see demand and supply. And in conclusion, I would like to appreciate my colleagues for this opportunity to share my view and opinion on such essential constraints and suggest a number of specific initiatives. We are ready to work together with government agencies and have long-term beneficial cooperation with domestic producers. Thank you for attention. Thank you, Nurahmet Kanatovich. You have covered most of the aspects related to increasing Kazakhstan-produced content in procurement. So based on what you said in your presentation, I don't even have questions to you. Yes, thank you very much. I think at some point in time, we've realized that it's time to be realistic, to look at the drawbacks of the system. Today, large mining enterprises are willing and ready to cooperate with domestic producers, but the results and the KPIs set by the president could only be achieved with joint efforts and dialogue. Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to Batalov Raimbek, the chairman of Presidium of National Chamber of Entrepreneurs at Amiken. Distinguished participants of the forum, and all of the presenters and all of the participants refer to the September's presidential address, where he set the task of 10% of offtake contract up to 60%, to increase it to 60% over 3 years. And 3 years will go very fast. We understand that very well. And I think it's not an easy job, a responsible job, but achievable. In order to achieve that, we need to improve the existing mechanism, which does not fully stimulate the increase in local contact. It's our joint job to improve and implement system-based approaches to stimulate higher local contact. And we suggest comprehensive solutions for that, where there will be priority access to procurement for those enterprises who have higher share local content. Also improving the process of procurement and certification, offering state support and monitoring the implementation of the investment projects by those companies, having control across the board. Today, this forum is done in the partnership with the domestic producers, subsoil users, and government agencies. The mining sector has a huge potential, as was mentioned before, and I'm sure that under the policy of President Tokayev, we could achieve significant success. This forum allows for demonstrating comprehensive solutions, discussing them and receiving feedback, and jointly improving the mechanism of stimulating local content. According to statistics, in 2021 alone, subsoil user procurement amounted to around 9 trillion tenge, where a significant share was imported goods. National Chamber of Entrepreneurs, together with KPMG, are working to develop two economic models. The first one shows the macroeconomic effect from localization of imported goods, and second allows using real-time data to help investors choose the most beneficial projects to localize imported goods, which will provide for transfer technology. And We would like those models to be used in the development of state support measures. And in the process of improving the situation with the local content, we will come to you with those models. We're finalizing them now. They're very useful. On the slide, you can see the extract on the existing macroeconomic effects of the mining sector. And below, you can see the projected social and economic effect after localization of production of goods. But I think that the major effect will be new opportunities for small and medium enterprises on professional growth of companies. And today at the exhibition, companies interact with each other, sharing projects. I've had a number of meetings, and I see that businessmen are enthusiastic. They see that some things work better, some things are more interesting in other companies, and they are interested in technological advancement. It's important that the mining sector is coming together to discuss what local content projects could be implemented. On the next slide, we see the algorithm of the system which we are developing together with the Ministry of Industry and Construction, with the mining sector, and with the domestic goods producers. The principle is in consolidation of demand of subsoil users to reflect the total capacity of the market and the smart system of matching demand and supply. As a result of that, the system will allow setting a real list of goods that could be localized, where capacity could be expanded, where quality could be improved. How this works, Alexander Oskhanovich and dear participants of the forum, I suggest that you have a look at the video that we would like to show you to demonstrate the principles behind the system. Part of it is already operational, and in our video we wanted to show this operational part for you. Mining companies or customers individually register at the platform. Registration process is simple and it takes just 2 clicks. The same 2 clicks to register suppliers. After the registration, the customer uploads the existing procurement plan, their plans for the next 3 years, and the procurement record and the existing contracts with suppliers. Suppliers, after the registration, have the whole access to the procurement analytics of the mining sector. Both the domestic goods producers with certificates and suppliers without certificates could be eligible. The latter could obtain the certificate on the platform. Next, we have the smart system of matching the needs of the mining sector with the capabilities of domestic goods producers. The objective here is to identify suppliers who could offer the required goods to the customers. The system automatically downloads the list of suppliers, excluding non-integral suppliers, and Atomican, together with authorized government agencies, will develop the methodology for pre-qualification selection of domestic good producers, and only after that we will have a final list of authorized and approved suppliers. The final stage would be signing contracts and having a final list of goods on which we will have localized production with higher local content. The whole process from beginning to end is tracked and traced by government agencies and Atomican Chamber. They have complete access to all the features of the system. Digital analytical platform is designed to facilitate and improve the whole process of procurement. Mining enterprises will have access to supplier offer analytics, whereas suppliers will be able to see the required lists of goods and services, and government agencies, together with the National Chamber, will monitor transparency of contract arrangements. Distinguished Alexander Oskhanovich and colleagues, as you see, almost all of the process are at the dynamic stage of digitalization. So the key is that even now the system allows the participants to leave their digital trace and footprint. I believe it's very important on all of the key stages, which allows us to effectively improve the mechanism. Before, all of that used to be done manually. We very well understand that in any reform, it's very important to leave the comfort zone, and there are always concerns, but we should test and try things and move forward. Currently, there are two sides of the truth. Two presenters spoke before. The position of the mining sector is that there is a limited set of domestic suppliers, and they have issues with the quality that they offer. And domestic producers have the same questions to mining industry about the transparency of procurement and selection and signing of offtake contracts. And during this forum, we see that we are starting to address those issues together, and regulation by the state should also be reformed. We need a fair, equitable, and transparent mechanism. So everything related to pre-qualification, selection of domestic producers will be improved together with the government. We try to streamline it as much as possible, and we believe that this approach is fair. When we control pre-qualification selection very thoroughly, but streamline and simplify everything else. Another issue is improving the certification system. As was mentioned before, we're actively discussing it with the government and the Ministry of Trade and Integration, taking into account the register of the National Chamber. It's about improving the rules on setting the share of local content. And then we will require amendments in terms of giving priority to regulated procurement and in providing state support measures for companies that have higher Kazakhstani-produced content. In any investment contract, we have this specially dedicated part of the register of investment projects with the control process, which will be done across the board, and we offer such a mechanism. Today, we've presented to you approaches on improving local content, and we've been working on that together with the government over the last couple of months. Alexander Oskhanovich, we've discussed this with you multiple times. We've sought your approval, and now we already see the results. The system covers all of the processes. It's all worked out jointly with the subsoil users, with the domestic producers, with the ministry. We test and try things and give our feedback. Currently, we are all together improving this mechanism, and as a result, we will have a packaged solution, which, among other things, will include the required legal amendments, as was mentioned before. It's Rule 355 and the Law on Industrial Policy, the Code on Subsoil and Subsoil Use, and other regulations. More detailed discussions will be held during the panel sessions, and now, if you allow, we are ready to move to the procedure of signing offtake contracts that have been improved and tested in the system. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Rembek Anvarovich. I appreciate all of the speakers for their substantial presentations. Now we're moving to the ceremony of contract signing. Distinguished Alexander Oskhanovich, distinguished participants of the forum, allow me announcing the beginning of the solemn ceremony for signing contracts and memoranda among subsoil users and domestic good producers. This work took more than half a year and involved the Ministry of Industry and Construction of the Republic of Kazakhstan, the National Chamber of Entrepreneurs at Temikin, and the representatives of businesses. Today, 4 large companies represented by ERG, Kazakhmys, Kazminerals, and Kazzinc will sign offtake contracts, long-term contracts and memoranda with a total amount of 58,954.3 million tenge. Now, I would like to start the signing of the respective documents. I announced the signing of offtake contracts and contracts by Kazminerals with domestic producers with the total amount of 3,221.6 million tenge. The signing of offtake contract between two Pakadars and Kazminerals on the supply of resin and metal panels to Grohot and Butaru. The signing of offtake contracts between Kazminerals and LLP Taras Kosh Obov on the supply of protective special shoes wear. The signing of offtake contracts between LLP Kaztsink with domestic goods producers with a total amount of 18.6 billion tenge. The signing of offtake contracts between LLP Prolux and LLP Kaztsink for the supply of LED lamps. The signing of a memorandum between LLP Teotech Service and LLP Kaztsink on PPs and service provision. Signing of offtake contracts and agreements between ERG and domestic producers with a total amount of 9,132.7 million. Signing of long-term contract between LLP Kaspi Plus and ERG on supply of metal spare parts. The signing of a long-term contract between LLP Soropan Operating and ERG on the supply of limestone hydrate. The signing of long-term contracts and memoranda between Kazakhmys and local domestic producers with a total amount of 28 billion tenge. Signing of memoranda between LLP Kazakhmys and NLP Iskra Service Plus. Signing of a tripartite memorandum between LLP Kazakhmys, LLP VTM-KZ, and LLP PES Global on the construction of steel milling balls. Allow me once again congratulating all of the signatories to the contracts with domestic goods producers and the largest companies from the mining sector. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I would like to once again express appreciation to the Prime Minister, Ismailov Alihan. Distinguished participants of the forum, I would like to once again express congratulations to the signatories on my behalf and on behalf of all of the participants present here. With the important decisions, I think they are mutually beneficial for those enterprises and for the development of our economy. I believe those are unprecedented contracts and we should have more of those. Today, during the presentations by the speakers, we've heard a number of suggestions, and I would like to inform you that a number of those suggestions we already have solutions, specifically acknowledging those offtake contracts as collateral for credit, loan, and investment. This has already been secured. We've done it together with the Agency on Regulation of Financial Markets and Financial Organizations. And the agency issued the regulation saying that such off-takes contracts with state-owned enterprises, with the companies who have an international ranking of BB- and large system-forming enterprises are considered hard collateral. We'll see how it's going to go, and we'll continue expanding the scope of application of such hard collaterals. Now, speaking about non-standard type of goods that are traded at exchanges, we made decision to exclude non-standardized goods from exchange trading. I believe this kind of forum is very useful. It was mentioned also at the Forum of Machinery Construction Industries, and we took this decision. And I'd like to ask the Ministry of Trade to give additional information to the mass media about how and when this decision will become effective. The head of Kazakhmys said that it's inconvenient to have two certificates of STKZ and the industrial certificate that confirms local content. Indeed, it's not convenient, and together with Atomican, we made the decision that we will have a single register of domestic producers and domestic products. And domestic producers will not have to obtain any certificates. All the information about domestic producers and their products will be maintained online in that register, which you could access at any point in time and receive the information that you need. So this practice of issuing certificates will be cancelled, and access to that database will be free of charge for all users. And during the panel sessions today, you will most likely mention other specific and constructive suggestions. And I would like to ask my colleagues from Atomican to collect and compile all of those suggestions so that we would take that into account, and I invite all of the participants to actively discuss, participate, and express their opinions. We are ready to make effective decisions together with you to move forward the development of our economy. Thank you. Thank you, Alekhan Oskhanovich, for such a rapid response to the presentations by our speakers. I would like to again express appreciation to our Prime Minister Alekhan Smailov and to all of the participants of the ceremony of contract signing, to our speakers for their participation. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite now to the stage two more speakers. The Minister of Industry and Construction, Sherlapaev Kanat Bisimbaevich, and the Chairman of the Management of the Eurasian Group, Mr. Shakhajanov. Dear ladies and gentlemen, we are continuing our panel discussion. I would like to invite Kanat Bisimbaevich Sherlapaev for his presentation. Dear participants of the forum, one of the most important tasks for us is to increase Kazakhstani-produced content in the mining sector and improving the procurement system for subsoil users and stimulating localization of production. In many countries, such policies are viewed as measures to protect and promote the development of the mining sector. Indeed, regulated procurement could be considered quite an effective development tool for domestic production and creation of potentially competitive industries at regional and international markets. For us, supporting local content is one of major measures to support the development of the industry. Due to direct support of domestic producers, different countries increase the production capacity of their countries, improve competitiveness, and expand the range of products that they manufacture and improve their competences to potentially access export markets. For Kazakhstan, the development of local content is fundamentally important to help us support local industries, increase local production and consumption of domestic goods. We've been working on this for a long time. We've been systematically monitoring the volume and the share of local content in all regulated procurement. And since we've introduced that monitoring, the share of local content has had a positive dynamic, and we've had growth of more than 60% at times. For example, since 2009 till 2014, the share of increase of local content increased from 48% to 63%. Naturally, the dynamic and the trend are different each year. Colleagues mentioned that recently growth rates have slowed down, and that's why jointly with National Chamber of Entrepreneurs, Atomic and other government agencies, we are hosting such events to once again increase the rate of growth of local content. As a result of 2022, the total volume of all goods and services in regulated procurement amounted to around 22 trillion tenge, and the share of local content reached 53.5%, whereas the total volume of import is more than 10 trillion tenge. Naturally, that means that there is a huge potential for further localization. Over the last decade, the volume of local content in goods, services, and works increased. But nevertheless, we still have a lot to grow. Subsoil users impact the growth of the local content significantly, and they have received more than 1 trillion tenge worth of supply from domestic suppliers. So as we see, this share has tripled over the last 10 years, which is the result of work of our mining sector with local producers. Today we've signed quite significant agreements of a long-term nature. And this is a follow-up on the work we've been doing together with our subsoil users. Over the last 3 years, there have been around 111 such contracts with a total value of 102 billion tenge. And here I would like to express appreciation to our subsoil users for a successful joint work, and we hope that we will continue in the same manner. I would like to specifically mention that the evolution of the regulatory framework enables such processes, and the law on the industrial policy that was recently adopted allows us making the regulatory framework more stable for better local content development, for boosting localization. The expected outcome of our support to domestic producers is that we should become competitive not only domestically, but we should also try to access regional and international markets. We understand that this priority is not just coming from us, from people gathered here today. The objectives that we have today were very clearly laid out in the National Action Plan that was developed based on the presidential address on September 1st, where he sets the economic development trajectory of the fair and equitable Kazakhstan. One of the important measures in that plan include the higher share of offtake contracts with domestic producers to 10% and increasing the share of Kazakhstani content in regulated procurement to 60% over 3 years. Actually, those are very realistic targets. We believe they are achievable. And from our perspective, with proper cooperation between domestic producers and the mining sector, great results could be achieved, in my opinion, in relation to those targets. In conclusion, I would like to mention that such events create unique platforms for interaction. Reinbek Anvarovich used a metaphor for this event, face-to-face, where we have the mining industry and the domestic producers talking face-to-face directly to each other. And I do believe that such platforms would allow us maintaining such a dialogue and achieving the results that we have on Kazakhstani-produced content increase. And I would like to specifically mention the initiative that was voiced by colleagues already today, which is the creation of a regional dialogue platform based on the location of our large mining enterprises. I believe that cascading today's dialogue to regional level, to provincial level, will allow us achieving the results that we want to achieve faster. That's why, first of all, I would like to express appreciation to our colleagues for organizing, specifically National Chamber of Entrepreneurs at Tamiken, and I would like to say that such platforms for dialogues between domestic producers and large procurers allow developing local content. And I wish all of you successful and fruitful work. Thank you. Thank you, Kanat Bisimbaevich, for your support and for support to subsoil users and mining companies. Thank you. I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Shahazhanov Sergey Karimzhanovich, the chairman of the management board of LLP Eurasian Group. Good morning, dear participants of the forum. President, in his address, mentioned the tasks on increasing the share of local content in procurement and promotion of offtake contracts and maximization of the use of local raw materials and resources. 1,067 billion tenge, or 62% of the total ERG consumption in Kazakhstan, is sourced from domestic sources. And this success we have achieved together with you. And on behalf of our company, I would like to express appreciation to each domestic producer, domestic supplier, and domestic contractor. ERG always strives to comply with the standard of a stable and responsible company. Yes, we have strict requirements to quality, but our enterprises are large exporters and they are obliged to stick to the highest possible standards of quality. In 2023, we want to increase it by 10% and achieve the amount of 1,200 million. We're not just talking about factories and production. We believe that industrial enterprises such as ERG has a unique opportunity to affect not only the future of their operations, but the future of the regions where they are located. We have a local content strategy that we have developed with three major pillars. The first one is import substitution program. Starting from 2020, ERG has an endless import substitution program on our trading platform. We always upload our long-term and mid-term procurement plans, and potential Kazakhstani producers could apply on the goods that they could potentially produce locally, complying with the required standards. When there is a positive decision on their application, we sign a long-term contract with a potential supplier or offtake contract. And we are ready to provide big advancement payments on critically important goods for us. In 2023, the list included in the products increased by 3.5 times. Now it includes more than 11,000 items. It's almost all of the nomenclature of goods that we import currently. Due to domestic producers, we have signed 30 offtake contracts, long-term contracts, and more than 20 memoranda with domestic producers. In 2024, on top of procurement for our operations, our investment program amounts to more than 400 billion tenge, where we also want to increase the share of local content. Secondly, development of localization of production by SMEs. To implement the assignment of the president to have clusters. ERG is constantly supporting this area. We mostly focus on those cities where our enterprises are core enterprises. First of all, we talk about aluminum cluster. In 2022, we supplied 42,000 tons of primary aluminum. This year, the volume of supply will be more than 51,000 tons, and for the next year, we're planning to supply more than 70,000 tons, which is more than 70% of the total production. It will be supplied to the domestic market, and we have a preferential price, which is another contribution that we make. Only in 2021, due to preferential prices, the contribution of ERG into the development of domestic production amounted to more than 3 billion tenge, and it's only going to grow. Our aluminum factory is a good base to continue deep processing, creating wires, aluminum profiles, aluminum discs, and other items. We are proactively working to find potential producers for those items that we require. For example, we have supported the idea of our former employees who created a company, To Arkalyk Krim Service, to produce spare parts to some mountain machinery, and To Torga Invest Group, they are producing assembly lines for our equipment, and ERG is ready to create demand for domestic products in sufficient scope and at adequate prices. We're asking the government to potentially look into prioritizing state support measures to domestic producers. Distinguished Prime Minister already mentioned a number of measures that have been supported, and we suggest additional proposals like temporary tax vacations for new domestic producers that will ensure import substitution for large mining enterprises, which will be similar to special economic zone regime, but will not be limited to a special territory. Third one, the development of domestic production of competitive goods. In presidential address, the president stated the need to increase the share of localization, which will allow to decrease import substitution. Being domestic producer, ERG is focused on creating deeper processed goods within the framework of our nomenclature. At Shubarkul-Komer, we built a new plant with the production of special coke with the capacity of 400,000 tons per year, with the investment of more than 60 billion tenge. Special coke is a secondary processing good, which is a know-how of our research facility, which is used for ferrous alloy production. This new production will allow to reduce import substitution, specifically imports from Russia and China. We're talking about more than 30 billion tenge per year, which used to be imported, and it will increase the Kazakhstani content in ferrous alloy produced by ERG. Dear participants of the forum, dear Minister, I would like to connect in real time the special coke production factory of Shubarkul-Komer. We have the general director there from the factory, Sergei Pavlovich Kim. Sergei Pavlovich, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon. On behalf of all Shubarkul employees, we welcome the forum. We're happy to become a part of this important event for the business of Kazakhstan. The construction of the new factory is the contribution of ERG to the National Import Substitution Program, which has significant importance, as mentioned by our president multiple times. At this new enterprise, we have 184 new jobs. On top of the major products, we are planning to produce coal resin and coal oil in the amount of more than 70,000 tons per year. We're going to use D brand coal from Shubarkul coal mine. And would you please allow us to start the new production? Yes, I allow you launching this production, and I wish you success with that. Distinguished Kanat Bisimbayevich, thank you for participating in the launching of a new factory, which is a direct contribution to the development of import substitution and Kazakhstani content. I wish new victories and achievements to all of our local producers. We're always ready for mutually beneficial cooperation. Thank you. Thank you, Sirik Karimzhanovich, Kanat Bisimbayevich. I sincerely congratulate you with the launch of new production factory. Dear ladies and gentlemen, today we've had important comments on procurement procedures, improving the quality of products by domestic producers, and innovations in investment contracts. It's important to mention that all of the participants of today's session are united by the understanding of the need to improve Kazakhstan-produced content, both in goods, services, and works, and in skills. And I'm happy that we managed to hear some constructive proposals today, and we have witnessed a launch of a new project in Shobarkul, and the start of a new business that offers aerophysical services. So with that, I would like to congratulate colleagues with new projects and wish all of you well-being and success. Thank you.